Thank you so much, Dom, for this opportunity and for all of you to be here to hear and discuss this exploratory analysis of data from the Research Excellence Framework, or REF, commissioned by VERA. Today, when I was listening to the other presentations, I was thinking a lot about myself, because I consider myself as a diverse academic, and I also started as a researcher and then got a position as a lecturer. So I have been through all those different contracts. And on my initial PhD, I also did multi-level modeling, that today was also mentioned, to look at quality in schools and then follow up those results doing case studies. So I considered myself quite diverse in terms of also the methods and the research questions we can ask. So the research question we take to analyze REF data is, what is the progress of education as a discipline according to REF? So we know that REF is strongly shaping higher education, not only nationally, but also internationally with the league tables. And by taking this longitudinal view, we can explore development, trends, and changes beyond a single moment of time. And REF provides this publicly available data, so we can explore the progress of education's quality profile from the last two REFs, comparing 2014 with 2021. And as education is only one of the 34 subject-based units of assessments, or UOAs, we can also compare the progress of education with other disciplines. But we know that there are strong limitations when we are comparing or trying to compare like with like, because we have a moving target. The rules of the game from the REF 2014 to 2021 changed. Not only in terms of who submits, so the staff submitted in 2014 was a selection of staff. Now we submit 100% of staff with significant responsibility of research. But also now we can also present work from current and former staff. Also the output requirement per staff changed. Before there were 4 outputs per staff, now is 1 to 5 outputs per staff. And we also know that the weighting of the sub-profiles for the overall profile also changed. So we know that impact has been growing in importance, and we saw those in the case studies. And also the number of units of assessments also changed. It's reorganized differently from 36 to 34. So REF says, caution must be exercised in comparing outcomes and results between the two exercises. So taking that warning, we still think it's very relevant to do this comparison, because if something, REF 21 is trying to be more inclusive and a better representation of what we had before. So in that light, we think it's super important to look at what happens across time. So what methods, data, and approach we took? Well, this is an exploratory secondary analysis of the publicly available data sets that are in the REF website. So we use descriptive statistics, frequencies, and percentage to observe if the percentage of submissions meeting each standard improved, worsened, or stayed the same from those two measuring points. And first, we look at the absolute story of education. What happened with education between those 2 points in time? And then what happens, what is the relative progress of education? What happens with education when we compare it with others? And here we had long discussions of who to compare with. And we thought that it was very, very important to compare with disciplines that we think we have more similarities, like sociology, but also with other units of assessments that are quite different. So, for example, clinical medicine, psychology, psychiatry and neuroscience, English language. So those were our criteria for looking for a comparison. Those that are similar and those who are different. So something that we also looked and considered important for doing this like comparison is to look. We created a merged sample. These are only the institutions that submitted in both points, 2014 and 2021. So even though in 2021 education was composed by 83 higher education institutions, the sample that submitted both times is reduced. So of course this has effects in terms of how we can generalize these results. But we thought it was important to work with a merged sample because we're looking here at trajectories as well as looking at the overall discipline. And in this respect, we did not look in detail at how one institution did in comparison with another. We are really thinking about the discipline of education and our comparisons. So the blue, red, and green colors are to express when things improved, when things were decreased, and green the same. So first we have education, and then sociology. So these are the results for education, sociology, psychology, clinical medicine, and English Lit. So the first good news for education is that from the two measuring points, 2014 and 2021, the overall percentage of education as a sector, so the average amount of 4 stars, improved from 21 to 29%, so an 8% increase. And this was happened at the same time with reductions in grade 3s, grade 2s, grade 1, and as you can see, the unclassified and 1 almost, across every discipline did not have a lot of change. But then if we compare with sociology, so that's this 8%. I was just looking at the report from David James that is in the brochure we have. He's talking about the same 8%, even though they didn't do a merged sample, so that's good news. So he's celebrating that 8% increase in grade 4s. He says that's great. But my point here is then when we look at the comparisons, and if we look, for example, sociology, that increase is much higher, almost doubles, is 15%. Psychology 6%, clinical medicine 13%, English Lit 14%. But something also that is important to look here is that here in education we are up to around 30% of our submissions are grade 4. But if you compare with sociology, they improved to 40%. So this is also important. It's not only how much we increase our grade, our 4 stars for funding reasons, but also where do we start and what is the proportion overall. So, for example, English literature we found really interesting that also increased a lot and is around the 40s, over the 40%. So that's something really interesting that it's not just how much we progress, but overall how we are doing when we think of all the other submissions. So this is the overall profile. And this is the output, which is very, very similar. The same, the blues. So I would let you look at those figures a little bit. But you can again see improvements in grade 4s, reduction in grade 3s and 2s. So we are, education and the other sectors, we have become better at obtaining the highest quality, the 4 stars, and reducing the other 3 and 2s, whilst the 1 remain almost the same, but are also really small. And, we are here only looking at percentages, but they're small overall. So this is what happens with outputs. Impact. Here is a little bit different. We can see that education's change of grade 4 outputs in terms of impact. So these are the case studies, increased from 28 to 38%. And you can see that this increase is relatively bigger than sociology. In psychology, we saw a decrease in the grade 4s, the same in clinical medicine, and English literature is a little bit higher. But then if you look at psychology or clinical medicine, that they reduce their percentage. But if you look again at the amount that they already had, so the reduction is from 47 to 44% in psychology. And here we are again, we haven't got beyond the threshold of the 40%. So that's something, again, to consider. And then when we look at our results in terms of the environment, we can also see that this is the area assessed by REF where we did less well. So a 1% reduction in the overall grade 4s. And this is unique in education. We don't see in our comparisons something similar, but just the opposite. And again, we are even below the 30% or the 25% percentage of grade 4s in environment. So probably I don't know how this connects with what the discussion we have been having before in terms of what is the experience of those students, what is the experience of those colleagues working in different universities, but clearly environment seems like an area where we will need to work harder. So, wrapping up these results, we can see when we look at the progress of education and the rest of the disciplines from the last REF 2014 and 21, we see an improvement in the research quality as measured by REF results from 2014 to 2021 in education and the 4 comparisons units of assessments in the overall profile as well as subprofiles, output, impact, and environment. So overall, we all got better at getting better grades. And if we look at the sub-profiles, education improved mostly. It's 4 stars impact, 10%, followed by outputs, 8, whereas environment decreased in 1%. So it appears that education seems to have a differential quality, showing much clearer progress in impact and outputs, but perhaps, this is a question, perhaps to an extent at the expense of its environment. And we also saw that overall, the 5 units of assessment tended to improve their research quality by increasing the proportions of 4s and 3 grades and reducing the 2 and 1s and unclassified over the period in every profile as subprofile evaluated. However, education's relative progress is at a lower rate in comparison with other units of assessments, except for impact. For example, while sociology, a similar unit of assessment, has 40% of its output rated 4 stars in 2021, this was only 26 in education. So this has very important implications for funding. But as we know, as this data has some limitations and taking into consideration those cautions, it's important to recognize that this is only an exploratory analysis that needs to be considered with other sources of evidence to draw conclusions, and also that the merged sample that we construct limits the representative of the analysis, but overall we think it gives us the opportunity to look at education and some comparisons over time. So it allows us to think what this, and this is the question now, what this means in practice and what this means for the discipline. Thank you so much, and I'm really happy to have some questions.
Thank you, Bernie. Okay, would anyone like to start us off in terms of the REF information analyses you've seen there? Be our guest.
So when thinking about testing regimes, we see that when you change testing regime, results drop, and then people get familiar with it, and it increases again. So you get this called sawtooth effect. I don't know where we stand with the REF, so this is my question. to some extent, people recognise it from the 2014 ref, and there's quite a lot which is the same. So to some extent, institutions will be able to gear up research to do better at it, but to some extent, it's changed. So in your view, what's the balance of these two things? Have we done better at the 2021, or were there things that we weren't anticipating in the new assessment?
I think that's a very interesting question. Also, because the rest of my work is on accountability, so I work with Ofsted grades, and I see the impact that Ofsted grades, especially I would say the negative impact that they have for equality. So how they can really support inequality. So I think that there could be some learning, but I can see the learning of the system, and maybe that's why we're getting better at answering the test, at answering ref. But I see the change from 2014 to 2021 in general as a good thing, like trying to reduce those unintended consequences or that gaming. But this will happen, but we cannot get rid of that gaming, because whenever we have a very high-stakes system, every institution will do what they think better to accommodate to that. So I don't know how much of what we see we can really attribute it to an improvement in quality. So that's what I'm saying. In terms of ref quality, how it's been measured, this is what we see. But we need to look at more detail at what's happening, for example, with the survey, how we link this with experiences, with what's happening in terms of the environment, I think is really important. But I cannot, it's entangled. What is the learning system and what is it's truly, truly a quality improvement.
I mean, it struck me that what you were saying about impact, that does kind of fit. Obviously, we've got the different sources that BERA has commissioned, and then we've also got the work that the REF panel did and David James has presented around that. And he's certainly, his report for BERA, which I think is out now, isn't it? The examples of case studies of impact. Your analysis found positive things to say there, so I think we should definitely be. And it also seems, for me, it fits with what I know from just working in education research, that and what other teams here today were saying actually about things like values, that we're committed, we have values. A lot of the time we enjoy and are passionate about what we do. So that's a story for me that fits. And I think you're right, the really troubling bit is the environment, isn't it? And even the basic environment is a bit of a problem. And maybe that is an area to really focus attention in what little time BERA has and people have. Because, of course, if we get some of that better, it should mean that the other measurement areas will improve, admittedly, over a long period of time. But anyway, I've got... So, Sean, have you got someone over there? I didn't catch, no? Okay, and then, yeah, okay.
Yeah, Bernie, thank you. I mean, one just metric you could possibly have applied to that might have been more graphic was perhaps to add the percentages getting 4-star and 3-star together and just to show them in the tables as well, because it might actually...
There will be in the report we are writing.
Reported, yeah.
So we put the threshold in 3. So we looked at 3 and 4, weighting the 4s and 3s and the pattern is the same. I thought that today to really show the more detailed, I bring them together. But yeah, that will be in the final report, and there's no change to the overall story I told.
I could see what it was telling us just by doing the sum. But no, the other point, just if I may, is a bit like your work in Stuck Schools. It might actually be interesting now, following the ref, for someone to go and look at where the 1- and 2-star work, in which institutions that seems to be concentrated, to see whether they are now already, not in 5 years' time, but now working on improving their practice on the back of, sadly for them, a poor ref. Now, that's, I just put that out there as an area for further exploration.
Definitely challenging. But
yeah, that's something I think we can use, make a good use of the metrics, is exactly use it as a guidance for good practice or things that we need to improve. And there's a lot of room for collaboration, even though the whole system, we are competing. I think by having a common metric, we can find those commonalities between institutions.
Just very briefly, they are changing the ref.
I know. The ref is changing, and it will have probably, if we believe the headlines last week, it will have more emphasis on impact and environment. So.
Thanks, Bernie. And just to pick up really on Sean's point maybe, but you mentioned that there's kind of more to do, and I was just really interested, your last point about, are you able to talk to people? Are you doing interviews or any more kind of exploratory work on top of this, or no? This is kind of...
We could use it, I think we could use it for funding.
Yeah.
I think we started exploring, and we had one research question and addressed the secondary data analysis with that research question, what we can tell. But I think with Dom, we have been thinking that this is maybe the first step we can do something, and I would definitely like to do something, mixed methods in that way.
Yeah. Great to look at that in relation to some of the environment and culture stuff that we're talking about, wouldn't it? So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Okay. No one else for now. Thank you very much. Bernie, thank you so much. Yeah.